Story I read about you, that when you were in grade school in Olean, the children were let out of school to go see a special visitor.
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah, that park where he was going to make his speeches was just across the street from the school, so they just let us out and go over and get a taste of what the politics were like, I suppose. It was Roosevelt. Yeah, it was Roosevelt. And he was running for governor at that time. Mm-hmm. Not president, but as governor of New York State. After I got over in the combat zone over in the Pacific, we were called, our squadron, or our flight, our crew were called out to join in a formation flight. We were escorting somebody into Pearl Harbor who was coming by a naval vessel, military vessel, and we had no idea who it was or anything, and nobody told us. And we got out there and got in formation and escorted him in. He came by boat into the Pearl Harbor, and I later found out it was Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Wow.
And he was president then, and also commander-in-chief of the military. That's when I ran into him that time.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
I was going up Elmwood Avenue, heading back to my job in Buffalo, when President Roosevelt came on the air and says, the United States has now declared war on Japan. And then he told about the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
This is a war of distances, of long-range attack. Our spearhead is the giant B-29 Superfortress. An armada of thousands of these flying battleships is in preparation, and that calls for tens of thousands of Wright Cyclone engines to power them. We don't expect experienced help, and Wright will pay you while you learn. You'll be saving American lives on the Jap beachheads, and you'll learn a useful trade in an industry with a great future. Remember, Wright is in the Pacific War till the last shot is fired, so stay in the fight. Work it right.
The plant that produces more United States Army planes than any other, busy turning them out. Buffalo, New York.
When I got there, that Curtis Wright there in Buffalo, they already had a National Guard up on the roofs with machine guns. I don't know if they were thinking about being bombed or being invaded or what. And I remember telling them that I was going to join the military. They offered me a deferment. And
Because you were at Curtis Wright?
Yeah, because of a defense plant. And I said, no, it'd only be a matter of time and I'll be back into the service anyways. I wouldn't go right now. I enlisted, yes.
In the Army Air Force?
Well, at that time it wasn't it was the Army Air Force, right. Me and airplanes were just like that all the time. Made model airplanes ever since I can remember. Graduated as a fighter pilot, and when I graduated, they just gave me a set of orders to report at Greenville, South Carolina, and I expected to see a bunch of fighter planes. Need fighter pilots anymore, so they took all of us and put us in with the crews that they were making up for these B-25s, and gave us transition flying into bombers.
When you were dropping bombs, did you have a way to kind of assess the damage?
Well, no, we didn't do that, but the tail gunner got a good look at it as we got away from there. Because we were getting shot at all the time when you're on a bombing run. And what you do, you turn into a bomb run, and actually the bombardier takes over the plane, more or less. Mm-hmm. He relays to the pilot, go up 50 feet or go down 50 feet, shift to the right 1 degree, or turn to the left 1 degree, and hold it right there. And you got to do all this in about 30 seconds or 40 seconds.
So the bombardier is instructing you.
He's instructing the pilot where to put the plane on that line that the bombardier is following.
Right.
And then eventually he'll say, bombs away. And then away we go, because by that time the sky is just full of ACAC, what we call ACAC. Yeah. Shrapnel flying all over the place, and your plane is getting tossed all over the sky. We went there on a top secret mission. We had a torpedo that slung underneath this bomber with a wing. You know, they drop torpedoes out from Navy planes low. We could drop it from 50 feet or 10,000 feet. We carried that along with us while we did all the other kinds of missions. We did strafing and bombing and everything. We carried it right to almost the end of the war. And at the very end of the war, they finally found a target for us at Sasebo, Japan, that we could use that torpedo. And it was amazing. It had a big wing on it, and it would glide down. Once you release it, it would glide down like a glider. Right. And you could preset the movement of the torpedo after it entered the water to make concentric circles or figure eights or go straight or anything. And you could set the depth for it to go, depending on what your target was. You know, some of the big boats you wanted to hit them at a different depth. And we dropped those at that bay in Sasebo. There was 2 Japanese carriers there that they were working on. And they were firing at us, so we didn't stop to look back. We just kept on going after we dropped them. And a couple of days after that, we asked if we ever hit anything, and they said, we don't know yet. They're doing a reconnaissance flight, and one of the aircraft carriers isn't there. Wow. So they don't know whether it sunk or whether it somehow managed to travel out of there. But we did get to drop that torpedo eventually. In the military, these automatic feeding guns have every 7th bullet a tracer. So you can see where your bullets are going, and helps you to swing your gun and everything. Anyway, while we're diving on this thing, I can see these tracers going by the windows here. While we got closer, I actually ducked for a minute there, not a minute, but a couple of seconds, and we pulled up, and when I looked up, the windshield was cracked. Oh my gosh. They almost got us. That was a real scary one. Yeah. And then one mission from that same island one time that we did at the higher altitude bombing mission, they peppered us pretty good with the ACAC, and eventually one of our engines went out. And we went all the way back to Okinawa on one engine, throwing everything we could out of the plane to keep it in the air.
My gosh.
And those were the kind of missions we had. There was 6. There was another version of this plane where there was 5, and it had a cannon in it, a 75 millimeter cannon in it.
Mm-hmm.
It only had 5 members in the crew. But we had 6. We had a pilot, a co-pilot, a bombardier, which was also a navigator.
Is that your crew?
Yeah. And we had an engineer and a tail gunner.
And you were one of the pilots, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We had to have a name for our airplane, you know, the picture on it, right here. Right here.
Yeah, what's the name of it?
So we didn't know what to do. We didn't want to put one of them fancy girls on it. And we took the initials of each state that the crew came from, come up with a word, McMoney.
McMoney, yeah.
And I said, it sounds like something Scottish. I said, let's put a donkey up on there, call him Little McMoney. We had a stage built kind of in front of our screen, and the natives were going to put on a dance for us. And believe it or not, they loved chewing gum, and they would be chewing that gum and dancing. And all of a sudden, they're doing the Charleston from, you know, way back.
Wow.
And some of them had dropped their gum and they had their feet stuck in the gum trying to dance. And that was funny.
Oh my gosh.
That was a real show for us. Some of these missionaries weren't too happy with some of the native women that came out there only partially dressed, nothing on the tops. And so when they came the last time, they brought them cover-ups, Mother Hubbards, they called them. The next day, after they passed out all this stuff, the native women come out with Mother Hubbards on, and they had taken a pair of scissors and cut holes in the front of the Mother Hubbards.
Terrific.
That was a funny story.
Yeah. Remember when you got the word that the war had ended in?
Oh, I sure do. When we were still on Okinawa, and the day the word came out, every gun on Okinawa went off. You could see the tracers and everything just flying all over. And personally, I ran and got under one of them big steel vehicles because they were coming pretty close with those bullets. And there was an awful lot of noise, and the loudspeakers were yelling, "Cease fire, cease fire, we're killing our own men." The other incident where I ran into a real celebrity was really surprising to me. I was up at Kahuka Air Base, which is a northern part of Oahu in Hawaii. And I was up on top of the wing. I kind of glanced at it, and gee, they came right under the wing almost. Where I was standing right up in here. Mm-hmm. And they come right across here. And after they went by, and I got down off the plane, I asked the people on the ground there and the crew chief, what was that all about? He said, that was General MacArthur.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's a pretty big deal.